Good morning, Anne Claire.
Hi, Meg. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing good. I've just been, you know, living life. It's birthday season in my family. So I've had birthday after birthday after birthday, not just mine, but like both my parents, my sister, my boyfriend,
You're a twin, so
both my grandmothers. It's like birthdays everywhere. I'm getting tired of it.
When's the last birthday of the month?
This weekend, it's my dad's birthday. He's turning actually 60. He's kind of young for a dad because I'm kind of old.
I mean, I guess.
Kind of. I guess my mom.
I was trying to think, but my mom just turned 60 and my dad is significantly older. I mean, not significantly. I'm exaggerating. My dad's 68.
Okay.
So
Yeah. I always feel like my parents are kind of young, but then I'm like, maybe not. I think my dad had me when he was like 28 or 27, but my mom was like 25. So that was pretty young. I guess that's like normal for people.
Yeah, I think there's this weird thing, like the perception thing is like, I'm imagining you still feel quite young. And so I don't know. I feel like my parents are frozen in time to an extent. Like in a good way. Like I want them to stay this parent age, because it's nice, right? This illusion of like permanence of your parents. And so that's maybe also why it feels like they're young. I don't know.
Yeah. So you don't notice like a difference between your dad being like 55 and 65?
Well, kind of, but I don't feel like there's a dramatic change in the last 10 years. And so for me, he could still be 10 years younger, in my head, like the ways that he is. I feel like we are like doing this and like that all the time. And they're just like this constant. So
that's true. Like if you look at the last 10 years and everything we've been doing, like moving around, relationships, friendships, jobs, careers starting, school, all those things, there's so much drastic change compared to like our parents who have been settled with their person, with their career, in their home. I kind of get, is that kind of what you mean?
Yeah. I mean, that's partly luck as well, right? Because like, even when bad things happened, they never completely like it was never like a bomb exploding in the family, which I know that's down to sheer luck to an extent, right? But that's nice. And so that means that sometimes I'm like, oh, you're that age? I'm like, how did that happen? Like, I feel like I fast forwarded through something and didn't quite catch the time. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, like I don't remember my parents' 40th birthdays, but I was like alive and kicking. And the other day I was like, I can't believe I don't remember their 40th. Because I remember my mom's 30th birthday. I remember it. I was like 4. So
what happened that you remember it?
Remember the cake, obviously.
Did your face plant in it? Like,
I just remember it had these like really thick white chocolate shavings on it. And I was like, oh, this is so awesome. I just remember it was a surprise party. So there was a lot going on in the house. And I was very much there for that. And then I remember both my parents' 50th birthdays. I have no freaking clue what happened on their 40th birthdays.
I feel like that's good because, when we're kids, we're supposed to feel like we're the center of the universe and everything that matters is things that are related to us, not to other people. Like not in an egoistical way, but in a, literally we're developing our sense of the world and our experiences. And so, it's not shocking. I feel like that's maybe a good thing to an extent that you're busy remembering your life.
That's true. Those are the years too, where I was like in probably high school and middle school doing a ton of stuff. Like
feeling like every single choice that you make is going to change the rest of your life dramatically and making a big deal out of every single decision.
Exactly. It was too self-absorbed back then.
Again, like I think that's what we're supposed to be, It's just funny. Like when I look back and I'm like, oh my God, like I made out everything to be so serious and important when it's like years later, you're like,
Wow.
oh,
I
it's
had no
fine.
perspective. Like everyone watching this, like if you're really young and you take life super seriously, just remember that perspective is going to make life so much easier. Like I just remember going through those years and I had no long-term perspective. Everything felt like the most important thing. And like I hadn't had periods of like memorable ups and downs that gave me perspective, right? It was just kind of like everything matters and every exam matters and every sporting event matters. And like now, as someone who's 32, like I'd be like, okay, if like we lose a swim meet, I'm not going to go like cry over it. It's just like the perspective is so different once you like get out of that phase.
Hmm? But then again, I feel like you have to live through it in that way. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a teen psychologist or developmental expert of any sorts, so I don't know, but I feel like there's a reason for these different phases and that it's probably pretty healthy that we all go through them in the ways that we have. And that, it's not like, I mean, if someone had told me at that age, if I went back to younger me and told her certain things, I'd be like, whatever, like rolling my eyes and be like, F off, I'd be like, whatevs, like, so lived through it. But if you can take it with an extra pinch of salt, great. But, probably something you have to live through anyway. And
Yeah.
that's fine.
Yeah. It would have been nice going through eating disorder recovery with more perspective, but
That was an intense perspective shifter.
yeah.
So, eh, you know,
Like I felt like for instance, and I know we have a topic for today, but for instance, like body changes. Every body change scared the living daylights out of me. But now that I've had so much space and time and experience in my life for my body to change and ebb and flow, not based on extreme dieting or anything, just like lifestyle, like moves and stressors and like medications and just like little body changes. Like, I'm like, oh, this is part of life. Like, there's always going to be like, my body's not this static entity. Right. And so I think like I had no perspective on that as a kid, it felt like very catastrophic to think about.
I mean, like no one teaches us those things, to a big
Yeah.
extent. I remember certain things where I'm even surprised and impressed by little me or younger me for being so interested and curious about certain things. And other things where it's like, well, yeah, if no one talks about body stuff and body neutrality or like acceptance or whatever, like who's going to teach you that? I mean, no one until recovery, no one. And in the meanwhile, the rest of the world is teaching you other really harmful things. So of course it's a big deal, So we are the product of our environment to a big extent.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I definitely was. Anyway, let's get into it. Let's just get into it. What are we talking about today?
So we are talking about the following. So this was submitted over on Instagram before a little quick and chat. And we wanted to make sure that there would be a corresponding YouTube video for more humans to see and to listen. The question being, do you have tips to manage stress when working, studying, and trying to recover from an eating disorder all at the same time?
Oh, do we have tips? Well, first of all, when we think about the word stress, and when you have an eating disorder, if you have too much stress or you reach a limit where there's like this feeling of overwhelm, the feelings feel intolerable, there's always that threat of potentially using a behavior to feel better. So I think the goal of stress management, obviously, in eating disorder recovery is to decrease stress using coping skills so that those overwhelming feelings feel more tolerable and you don't lean on an eating disorder behavior, right? So that's kind of like when I think of stress in recovery, like that's a big thing. And we could go into like different ways to decrease stress, which I'm sure we will get into. But my biggest tip, honestly, the first thing I always say is look at your life and look at what's draining your energy and ask yourself, is there something I can take off my plate that is making recovery almost impossible on an energetic level? So if you are going to work like 60 hours a week, or say you're just working a ton or doing a full course load of school, or you have a really unhealthy relationship, whatever that might be, looking at those major things in your life and asking, what can I take off my plate if I have the privilege to do that? So like one thing I did, I took a semester off from college. And every time I say that, everyone takes a sigh of relief. Like, wow, someone did that, so I can do that too. Like, it's okay if you need to pause what you're doing to give yourself the extra space and time and energy to focus on what's the most important thing at the moment, which is healing your eating disorder. So, what are your thoughts on that? I know you have a lot to add.
Yeah, I mean, this is hard. Like, this is really hard. Like, the fact that, if you are currently struggling with like feeling overwhelmed and having so much on your plate, the school, the work, the studying, like the recovering, that sounds like a lot. And it is really, really hard. And you're right, Meg, when you say like, if you have the privilege to, please reassess the situation, because we know that it's not always possible. But if it is, it's important that you do. And then you don't basically fool yourself in pretending like it's fine and manageable. Now, I like to look at recovery as the backbone of the rest of life. And when I say that, I really mean it as without that, the rest is never going to be what it can be. I personally was that human who never dared to put anything else, to the side for anything. And to an extent, I 100% told myself, it's fine. I can do it. See, I'm performing. I'm achieving things. Like, this isn't in my way. Well, one, that's complete BS. It was still very much in my way. My relationships with humans were not good. Well, my relationship with myself was basically non-existent. My relationship with food and exercise was completely, unhealthy. And it was impacting the ways that I was managing work things and friendship things and the ways that I was even considering like personal development things and hobbies. And like, I didn't even have hobbies. I didn't even know what I liked. So, be honest with yourself and please take recovery as seriously as it deserves to be taken, because that truly is what glues the rest of your life together. Like without recovery, work is never going to be what it could be. Relationships with other people will never be what they could be. Like the ways that you are present in life, that you enjoy life, that you find pleasure in life, that you find contentment and happiness. And I mean, you might not even be in touch with those feelings anyways, because I definitely was not. I just knew like, fine, sad, angry. And that's not very flavorful, like literally and figuratively in terms of a life. So please look at recovery as the foundations of the rest. Like, family, school stuff, you build on top. But if you don't have the foundations, it's going to crumble at some point. Yeah. That's what I 100% believe.
Mm-hmm. I like how you point out like the potential of those other things. Like work isn't going to reach the potential that it could if you're putting all of that energy into your eating disorder. And that's why I think it is more productive to focus on recovery and take things off your plate. So pause a few things, focus on recovery, get stronger, heal as best as you can, and then add those things back in, because you can dive more deeply and more passionately into those things. So the potential is greater. Because why would you do 20 years of your life managing an eating disorder, barely surviving and hardly thriving at work because the eating disorder is dominating your brain space, right? So it's almost like a temporary investment to really, really focus on the eating disorder if you can.
And I don't think it's too much of a stretch to get to that conclusion if you're radically, brutally honest with yourself. Like, I didn't have anyone to ask me the questions in this way. I didn't have anyone to really have these conversations and challenge me on this level at the time. But if someone had, I think I would have been able to conclude that, yes, I am paying a price that isn't worth it, right? Because I was living under a certain illusion. The eating disorders are really great at, filtering out reality, at giving us serious tunnel vision about things. And now, if I have a conversation with someone who's considering reaching out for help through both, our training as coaches, but also our lived experience, we can help them filter things out again and take off the tunnel vision, glasses that point out and only into one direction and be like, what is the actual price of you continuing using behaviors? How can you tell me that has no impact on these other pieces of your life?
Yeah.
Is that really worth it? Again, my opinion doesn't matter. Everyone can make choices for themselves. And that's always the way that I work. Everyone can choose for themselves. Body autonomy is 100% a thing that I will always honor. Life autonomy, whatever you want to call it, your life, your choice. But be honest when you make the choice, right? Don't kid yourself. And one way to do that, I really believe, is looking at behaviors, cost paid to use those behaviors, maybe benefits that you think you're getting from the behaviors, challenging whether that's actually true or not. Because, the fact that something feels like it's doing something doesn't mean that it actually does the thing that it feels like it's doing. And I often find that the balance tilts very fast to the side of recovery. And I often have these conversations with clients, what is on your to-do list? What is in your calendar? What are you doing? Why do you do that? I should, I have to, this person wants me to, everyone in my family does that. And it's well, what do you want? How does that impact you? How does that impact your recovery? How does that impact your mood, your energy, everything? I'm not going to choose. It doesn't matter what I think, but let's really assess every single piece of that calendar and that schedule. And let's make sure that overall it makes sense and it's honoring you as a human. And we can't do all the time, by the way. You got to include rest and self-care. And that is your top tip.
That is always my top tip. I have to say, rest is productive. That is a hill I am willing to die on, as the expression goes. Rest is productive. I used this comparison the other day. I think it's worth bringing up again. It's the charging your battery thing on your phone. Your phone battery is like resting. You cannot use your phone if it does not get charged. It literally will die. As someone who is living life, it's important that you rest so you can recharge. And in those moments where you have to perform or do your best, you have the energy to do so, right? So I love rest. I see it as productive. All of you should see it as productive. It's a much better way to live. Yeah.
I love the phone thing because not only is your phone useless when it's dead, and you have no battery, but there's also that thing where, when it starts being red in the corner, you get stressed out about it. Same thing. If you have no energy and you don't have time to do things the way that you would like to do them, and you also get stressed out, in the same way that my phone was not doing things the same powerful optimal way, it will sort of put things to the side and not do certain things. You will do the same thing, whether we're talking about your body or the ways that you can approach the school, the working, the relationships and whatever. It will be the same thing. You will not be able to give in the same way if you had not been charged versus not charged.
So here's a question for everyone watching. Are you living life on low battery mode? Is your internet weak? Can you not load pages fast enough? Can you not send large files? Literally the thing, it's figuratively, if you're living life on low battery mode, what's stopping you from charging your own phone? What's stopping you? You would charge your phone if it was on low battery mode. Why wouldn't you charge yourself?
Mm-hmm.
So interesting.
No, it is hard, right? Like when you do this analysis of like, okay, so there's a lot on my plate. Let me review all the things. It's not going to be easy. If you can do that with someone, please try to have someone help you out to gently challenge you as you sort of like assess the situation. And you probably have learned a lot of things. Like you probably have a lot of shoulds and have tos and stories and beliefs about all the things that are currently on your schedule. So give yourself a break and some understanding for, being in this situation. And when you reassess and you look at things, make sure that, yes, you prioritize maybe like working versus studying, where it's really one versus the other, maybe. But don't forget that that's the foundation of the rest. Don't kid yourself in looking at it as, should it be number one and number two? It's like the before the rest. And make sure to include in the new, overall schedule, the rest and the self-care pieces, because they will also be what charges that battery.
Absolutely. And one other thing I want to throw in there, just as a reminder, if you feel like you're spinning like 6 plates, 7 plates, and you're like, I can't handle anything, like you can always ask for help, right? Like that's another form of like minimizing stress, is delegating and offloading a lot of the work that you're convincing yourself only you can do good, or only you can do well, or no one else should do this for you, or you'd be weak if you asked someone to help you. Like ask for help. That will help you so much. And if you're around people who refuse to help you or don't want to help you, I recommend maybe finding new people.
You just reminded me of something. Like a while back, I can't remember who, but I had a conversation with someone who used the same image of like spinning plates and like trying
a lot. I use that one a lot. I don't know why.
And I remember having that conversation, and it was like, it included 2 things. Like one, what is an actual plate that is going to break if it falls on the floor? And what is actually like a rubber ball that you don't even need to worry about? It can fall on the floor. It will just bounce back. And so she was like, I need to make sure that I know what is, like a rubber ball or a rubber plate and what is a glass plate, because that means that, those non-delicate ones, they can fall on the floor, they'll come back. It's fine. I'll pick them up later. And for the other ones, if I still can't spin all of them, then I need help. And I need to be clear on what belongs in which category, because sometimes, and this is something, I'm one of those, so I'm including myself in this situation. And yes, this is why we had that conversation. I will consider everything on my to-do list on the same level of importance. And it's like, no, girl, it ain't.
Yeah, they're all very different, like levels.
And having that clarity can help tremendously.
That's such a good extra like concept to the plate spinning, is like, what's a plastic plate? What's a glass plate? Or what's a rubber ball instead? You didn't even realize it's not even a plate. Like, interesting layer to that I'm glad you brought up, because I think it's worth checking in with yourself. Like, oh my gosh, this video could go on for like an hour. I know. Yeah.
Yes, it could.
Yeah. So maybe we'll stop there, because I was going to get into other things, and we'll just pause for now. So yeah, everyone here, if you feel like you're spread a little too thin, if you feel overwhelmed, if you feel tired, I think the takeaway is, see what you can take off your plate so that you can focus on recovery and strengthen that backbone of your life, because everything's impacted by the quality of your recovery and healing, right? So it's something to think about. And Clara, do you have anything you want to add before we wrap up?
Like, meet yourself where you're at. Take it step by step. Be compassionate. Try to be compassionate. And, shift one little thing and reevaluate, right? You don't have to always like overhaul the whole thing. Sometimes it's like, oh, there's that little thing that I could drop and put to the side and give myself, I don't know, an extra hour of self-care. Or there's that thing that I could take off my plate because I keep telling myself I have to do that and it's not true. And maybe I can do some journaling then. And that makes it easier for me to then do the recovery things, right? Like you don't have to always look at everything as this all or nothing. Like I'm either working or I'm not working, and I'm studying or I'm not studying. Like if that's a choice that's available to you, fantastic. If it's not, baby steps. And that's completely fine too. Be kind to yourself and make sure, like Meg said at the very beginning of this like answer, to look at what happens when I do get stressed out and what are my other options than using behaviors, because the reality, like you said, is that stress builds up. And what we do is we reach out for behaviors instead of other coping skills and tools to continue building that end of the things as well, which probably is an entire video on its own.
Yes. Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Anne Claire. And thank you to everyone watching. You guys are all amazing. Please comment, like, subscribe, do all the things. We are obsessed with this YouTube channel. We love reading your comments. We appreciate all of you for being here. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.